Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewire to Inspire. The show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewire to Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to my podcast, Rewire to Inspire. I'm your host, Jessie Brown, and I am really excited to be jumping on the microphone with you all for episode number 147. If you missed my last episode, 146, 10 Healthy Ways to Manage Stress, I definitely encourage you to check out that episode. Last week, we talked a lot about stress and stress management and recognizing where your unique stress levels are at. I've been recognizing so much so more than ever, we are all very stressed out. And whether we realize that consciously or not, stress plays a vital role in our mental well-being, how we show up, and who we are as human beings. So I definitely encourage you to check out that episode. For today's episode, number 147, if you don't know, my favorite numbers are 147, specifically in that order. And so I knew I wanted today's episode to be fun, from the heart, organic, and true. As I was sitting here this morning reflecting, I had several things come up for me today. And today's one of those days where, sometimes when you just wake up and you're like, it's just going to be one of those days. And you know that there's nothing you can really do to shift it. You're kind of just okay with it and accepting of knowing that not all days are going to be the same energetically. And I woke up this morning and I definitely felt that. And there was a part of me that was accepting of it, but also part of me that was very curious about it. So I'm like, okay, what's going on? And I feel like life, the last couple of months, maybe even years, but specifically the last couple of months, the best word that I can use to describe it is weird. I just feel weird. I feel like my sense of self is disconnected. I feel like the way in which I've been talking to myself internally, my inner dialogue has been off. The way I perceive myself has been off. How I've been showing up has been off. And I was just really curious about that because I'm like, okay, what is it that's going on today? What is it that's happening? And I realized, and as I was sitting with my journal and reflecting, I realized that so much of my life personally has been spent inside my head. And what I mean by that is I have a very strong internal dialogue, meaning I spend a lot of time talking to myself internally. I am someone who contemplates everything. I am very hyper aware. I am very curious, and I very much analyze everything. And I was so curious if anybody else's mind operates like this. And I realized that in a way, this is a beautiful thing because it allows me to have very high self-awareness. But I also recognize that it's exhausting. Having that inner dialogue be so loud all the time is really exhausting. And I wanted to come on here today and just speak a little bit about my truth and my experiences and how that's kind of played into my life, and just a little bit about where I'm at in recognizing that we're not all that different. And I realize that so many of us spend so much time contemplating in our own minds. And I recognize that recently this has been amplified to the point where I'm trying to have a conversation and I butcher my words. I can't think clearly. I feel foggy. I'm just disconnected. I was like, is this a me thing or is this a society thing right now? And although I cannot encompass us all in lump sums or in piles or speak as a collective. But even if this resonates with one person and you've been feeling this way, I want you to know that you're not alone. And so I had to reflect for myself, okay, when did that internal dialogue really begin for me? And I went back and I visited my childhood. And I'm like, okay, I had to spend a lot of my childhood in my own mind. And I was definitely someone who spent a lot of time by myself. I've always felt like even if there was people around, I still always felt very lonely. It's almost like nobody could ever really do anything that's ever made my heart completely certain. And I'm realizing as an adult, I'm like, what do I need to shift? What can I teach? What can I learn? What do I need to become aware of? Because as much as I've been surrounded by greatness in my life, and I'm so blessed and I'm so grateful, I feel like there's always been a part of me that just doesn't feel like it belongs. There's always been a part of me that feels like it can't truly relate to other people. And obviously, this isn't something that I'm just going to bring up with my friends casually over dinner. Like, hey, do you feel like you fit in? And I got so curious about what is that? What is that sense of disconnection from self? And does anybody else experience it? And if you do, where does that come from? What does belonging even mean? How do you classify what belonging is? What is it that makes your soul, your heart, your mind feel connected? And I had to contemplate for myself of, is this something that will always just be a reality for me? Is this just a part of my mental illness? Is this just a part of who I am? And I knew I wanted to come on here and just be honest, because I'm like, I don't know if this feeling of, it's almost like there's always been a hole in my heart that sometimes gets fulfilled, but then I notice that it goes away. And I think that I'm noticing in real time right now in this moment that that hole has been formed in a way to protect me. I am unfortunately somebody who has been let down and hurt more times than most people. And I'm realizing that that was maybe a part of me that has been formed to consciously protect me from feeling that again. But I'm realizing in some ways that's actually hindering me from feeling joy, from feeling happiness and fulfillment. And it's made me curious again, right now in this moment, what is maybe that void in your heart, that protector part within you that might be there more than you realize? Maybe it's abandonment wounds. Maybe it's trust issues. Maybe you have a lot of self-acceptance, self-esteem issues. We all have pain in our past. We all have a story. We all have a narrative. And I don't think we're all as different as we think we are. But we hold it all in. And I know for myself, I've held in this feeling for most of my life. And I think a large part of it is I didn't even want to admit to myself that I felt so different from everybody else. And I think it's really hard, and I'm not saying this in any way to sound narcissistic or better than, but from an outside perspective, one would think, oh, you have a podcast and you're a coach and you have an amazing job that you love and you have all these things. Like, shouldn't you be happy? And I think that it's really easy from an outside perspective to label what we think we perceive as success, as greatness onto other people. But what if that's actually the worst thing that we can do, is to assume? And I know that I am someone who I have felt like I've had to validate my own emotions for most of my life. And I'm also someone who's really, really good at suppressing how I'm feeling so that other people around me feel okay. I could be having the hardest day in the world, which it feels like today is just a lot heavier. And I would never want to burden anybody with that. I would never want to ruin somebody else's day with my own emotions. And I'm recognizing how much that's hurting me. And I want you to ask yourself you kind of do the same thing. And there's layers to this, because when you become so self-aware that you know when you're feeling off and you're conscious of it and you do nothing about it, it gets heavier. Depending where you're at in your healing journey, you might not even recognize the days that you're feeling disconnected and you're not feeling like yourself. And that will get louder and more clear the more that you heal. But I'm recognizing how toxic that is for myself and how much I cannot guide effectively on this podcast, through my coaching, in life as a mental health professional, if I'm not leading by example in that way and I'm suppressing my own stuff. And so I encourage you to ask yourself right now in this moment, when you are feeling like you're not yourself, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling disconnected, you're just having one of those days. Do you know what your response is to that? Are you someone who's able to ask for help? And I think a large part of this comes down to our attachment styles, right? It comes down to, what is your willingness and capability to ask others for help? And I know that this is going to be a detriment in my life until I'm able to voice what I need. But I think if you feel disconnected, it's almost like you don't know what you need. If you were never tended to in that way emotionally, you don't have that repetition. You don't have that awareness to be able to even assess for yourself what you need. And so when I'm feeling that way and someone asks me what I'm needing, I almost disconnect further, because I'm like, I should know what I need, but I don't. And it's often in those moments when we basically need just our basic needs met. If you've ever heard the acronym HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If one of those things is not being met, we will almost always feel disconnected from ourselves. Lonely is a big one within that. And yes, external loneliness, but if you feel lonely within your own soul, within your own system, that's the heaviest type of pain I think that we can feel. And I'm recognizing how much that feeling of being disconnected from myself is rippling into my sense of purpose, my sense of identity, my sense of everything. This morning when I was journaling, a part of me just wrote down, I'm done. I'm done. I'm ready to give up. I'm ready to quit. And although I know in hindsight, I'm not going to give up, I'm not going to quit, sometimes giving ourselves permission to know that we can allows us to feel in control. A lot of us that feel disconnected from ourselves, it's because we didn't have that sense of control when we were younger. We didn't have control of external factors that were influencing our emotional state. This is obviously very, very hard to talk about, and I'm very secretive and quiet about a lot of these things, but I unfortunately had a lot of experiences as a child where emotional circumstances were unpredictable. And I also experienced that a lot with partners, with friends, where I didn't know when shit was going to hit the fan. I didn't know when I was going to be yelled at next. I didn't know when I was going to get in trouble next. I didn't know when I was going to be lashed out at again. And so my nervous system was built on this really rocky foundation of never knowing what's to come next. And I've talked about this a lot on my podcast, but not fully in depth. And I know that there are thousands and millions and billions of other people out there that have experienced the same thing. And when our foundation is rocky, our system doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know whether it should be in a parasympathetic state or in a sympathetic state. It doesn't know when something is actually a trigger or when something is actually just mirroring what might be a trigger. And I'm sitting here at 24 years old, assessing for myself. Okay, you're 147 episodes into this mental health podcast. You have 11 clients. You are in the process of writing a book. You're doing all the things that you think would make you happy, yet they're not. And I'm recognizing that that's because my internal state has been feeling that pit and that hole for so long that no wonder I feel disconnected. And it's interesting because these things always come in waves. Because for a section of my life, this wasn't here, and I was able to tend to that, or so I thought. And then circumstances in life come in and they kind of rock our world, if you will. shifts happen, right? And it forces you in a way to reassess. When new factors come in, something has to shift. Whenever we have new people, places, things, ideas in our life, everything else is going to have to shift. It's just inevitable. But if our foundation is still sitting on that rocky territory, that will forever cause disruption within ourselves. And so my goal of today was really just to come on here and have an open conversation about what your internal dialogue might be, how you might deal with uncertainty. What is the strength of your foundation? Is your inner child yelling at you more than you realize to tend to it? Do you recognize how much you give of yourself at the expense of your well-being? I could be at a 20%, a 10%, and I would give someone 70, 80. I am such an overcorrector in giving, and I realize that that is a response of, I don't want to let people down. I don't want to be alone. If I give and give and give and I make everybody else happy and everybody else is good, well, at least I won't be alone. But I'm beginning to recognize that if you feel alone in your own body, isn't that the worst type of loneliness? What is it that we need to do to tend to that? And this is something that I clearly need to assess for myself. And I'm recognizing some of the main things is staying true to me, of self-assessing for myself where I'm at and being honest with myself of that. Is this worth taking a piece of me and hurting myself for somebody else? Is anybody else worth your own mental well-being? Have you healed those parts of you that have been so wounded? I've shared this before. Me, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, told myself a story and I had an internal dialogue that I had no trauma. And this was after my basketball experience. This was after a lot of shit that I went through in high school and college. A lot of stuff that most people don't know and I don't really talk about. But I told myself a story that I didn't experience trauma. And I'm like, how many other people out there that are inexperienced or unaware of really how trauma affects us are walking around feeling so invalidated in their own system? Because I have the awareness of how trauma affects the brain and the body and how I'm now aware of my experiences and I have done some of the healing on them, I'm like, that's because I chose a career in which focused on that. But how many of us out there that have never shed light on our past experiences and have not validated that our experiences have hurt us? How loud is your internal loneliness? And the thing is I think that we overcorrect, right? Because I recognize so heavily how many people where I live drink and smoke and do drugs very significantly, very regularly. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how much of this, when I see people just drinking all the time, every weekend, feeling the need to party, whatever it is, I'm like, how much pain are you covering? Do you even know that you're suppressing your pain? Do you even know that that's what you're doing? And yes, again, sometimes from time to time, I like to have a drink. But when I look up and I look around, I'm like, oh my God, you're shit-faced all the time. How much pain are you in on a day-to-day basis? And this podcast is kind of bouncing from thing to thing, and I'm just allowing my awareness and my consciousness to surface today and just bring up things that I've been contemplating. And I think that I'm also someone who is very, very much an empath. And I can assess and feel the pain deeply of another person when I'm in the same room as them. Someone could walk into a room and I instantly know where they're at 0 to 10. If they're hurting, I can feel it in my body. And often when I close my eyes, this is a weird part of me I don't really share. My intuition can almost tell me a part of pain that I feel in their body and where it stems from. This is something that I've experienced pretty much my whole life. And I think is why I feel this way so deeply internally is because I have not found an outlet for all of these emotions. I think for me, in a lot of ways, that was sports when I was younger. There's a reason I excelled at basketball so much. There's a reason that I was so good. And that's because I invested all that energy into sports, into becoming a professional athlete. But how many of us don't have those outlets? Or maybe we had them as youth, and as we grow up, we depend on, like I said, alcohol because it's societally accepted. If all of our friends are equally hurting and I'm hurting and we all get together and we drink and then everything's okay, think about how much we're normalizing not doing the healing. And so, my love today listening, I want you to just take a second and just ask yourself where you're at right now in life. What is it you're ready to let go of? And not even physically things. I'm talking mindsets. I'm talking beliefs, past experiences. What are you wanting more of? What are you craving more of? I know that I'm feeling this way because a part of me is like, you're ready for a shift. And I have an episode coming out on Thursday all about reasons why you might be feeling stuck in your life. Because we can begin to feel stuck when we're out of alignment. And again, tune in on Thursday. We're going to dive into 5 different reasons. But I always like to lead by example and to be truthful. And I know that if I'm feeling this way, somebody else is probably feeling this way. And although I might wake up tomorrow and life might be great and these emotions might pass, the fact that they are here and they are here today tells me that they're going to surface again. And it's not about judging it. It's not about being hard on ourselves that we have these days. It's about being curious about it. Is it deeper than just being an off day? Is there something not being tended to? Where are you overcorrecting and undercorrecting in your life? Is your life patterns that you're living right now sustainable? Is your way of living right now sustainable? Is it setting you up for a version of you that in a year's time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time, you are going to be grateful for, or you are going to wish that you had shifted and done something differently? I have begun to ask myself, in 5 years' time, where is it that I want to be? And is what I'm doing today going to get me further away from that or closer? If the answer is further away, then I'm then choosing in advance to take a hit down the line. When you become aware in that way, you begin to show up differently. There's a reason that I track 20 habits a day. There's a reason that I'm very intentional about everything that I do, but I also recognize that that comes with a kryptonite because I'm choosing to hyper view every action and thing that I'm doing. I know that that is a rare mindset to have, but I also know that if you're listening to this podcast and you tune in every single week, there is a part of you that is the same. You would not resonate with the things that I say if there was not a part of you that had that growth mindset, that had that willingness to want more out of life than just surface level. But it really starts with getting honest with yourself of where you're at, how you've been living, what you're needing more of, what you're needing less of, and most importantly, knowing that you're not alone. I never want to perceive myself as somebody who's got it all figured out and is so happy all the time and is just this great, super aware, cognitive, smart, intelligent person when as soon as I'm off camera or off the scenes, I am crying. I am telling myself harmful things. I am beating myself up. I am in a dark place. And again, this is not all the time. It comes in waves. But I never want to be naive that and to be perceived in a way that is inaccurate. That I think is one of my deepest pains, and something that really bothers me is for people to ever think that I have it all figured out. And I think that that's what our minds do. We compare to the best parts of people. And so today I wanted to show the vulnerable side, the pain side of knowing that today I am at like a 2 or a 3. I feel like I could cry at any second, but I also know that this is the mindset in the space that I want to share from as often as possible, because that's what we're needing more of in the world. A lot of my episodes are about 5 ways to do this, 10 ways to do this, how to change your life, how to set goals, how to rewire the brain, whatever. But it's like, hold on, let's just be a human to human for a second and to just raise our awareness together And also to know, I got a really beautiful message today of someone saying, I really resonated, ironically enough, with episode 10 of your podcast, 10 ways to change your life. And it just reminded me in that moment of, we can shift our life at any moment. We can pivot what we're doing at any moment. Just because you've started something, you've invested time and energy and resources and money into something, does not mean that that's what is stuck in concrete. I think that's when we start to feel like shit, is because we're like, well, this is what I studied. This is what my business is. This is what I've told everybody I'm doing. And so this is my identity. This is what I must be for the rest of my life. Your body will tell you when something is no longer serving you. We need to listen. And then furthermore, ask ourselves where that might be stemming from. So that is all I have for you guys today. Today was more of a conversation, self-awareness, contemplation for myself as well in real time. I had no script today. I'm coming off of my heart and my mind and my intuition, and this is what I wanted to leave you with. I hope that your August, which is so weird to say, is off to a great start. I hope that you know how loved and valued you are. If nobody has told you recently, I love you so much. I have so much appreciation for you. And the world is a better place because you are in it. Your uniqueness, you would not be here if there was not a part of your mission that was supposed to be fulfilled here. Each and every one of us has a calling here. And I know that that sounds very woo, but it is so true. And once we believe that for ourselves, life becomes so much more exciting than just paying the bills and living day to day. Each of us has a reason. Each of us has something unique about us that delivers something different to the world. We have to get out of our own way and heal our past, because unfortunately there are circumstances that come in and try to block us from that, try to hinder us from that, try to hold us back from that. But if we can persevere through and we can begin to recognize that for ourselves, think of the beautiful life that you can live once you stumble upon that. So sending you guys so much extra gratitude and love. And I so look forward to chatting with you on Thursday, where we are going to dive into some reasons why you might be feeling stuck in your life right now. So I look forward to chatting with you all then. Have a wonderful week. Bye, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am at JessieBrown13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.